Spokesman Pete Williams, also some words from Lieutenant General Tom Kelly and Captain David Harrington. Let's turn to our own retired United States Air Force General Perry Smith for some of the thoughts. We have heard from some Pentagon sources through Wolf Blitzer that General Powell and Dick Cheney were told that there are plenty of targets to keep this air campaign going another 3 or 4 weeks. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there are plenty of targets left, and that came clear in this briefing also. Lots of tanks, lots of artillery positions, some bridges still to be taken down. I would say at least a week. I don't know whether there are that many targets for 3 or 4 weeks. I would guess at least a week, maybe 2 weeks before the targets get so minimal that it's not much purpose to go after them.
And that's a point of diminishing return at which it would hardly make sense to take the effort to go out and continue to bomb in such thick
At that point, they'd be down basically to infantry with very little armor, very little artillery, so now
no signs whatsoever of backing down.
And the top local story tonight, LAPD officers angry and trying to cope with today's shooting death of a rookie policewoman and several other attacks on officers in just
It's like my country, my chosen country, killed my old country. I'm the only one from my family outside the country. If they die all, I'll be the only survivor.
Artist Hannah Alwardi is in pain for her relatives still in Iraq, but says do not misjudge her loyalty. She is an American. She and her husband Dia, a successful neurologist, found it easy to assimilate into American society, but discovered how little their fellow citizens understand Arabs.
Some of them, they look at you a little differently since the war started.
Why shouldn't most Americans feel comfortable with the Arab culture, with its long roots in the sands of Egypt and Arabia and the fertile riverbanks from which civilization itself sprung? Laurie Brand is a professor of Middle Eastern studies.
If you can just try and put aside cultural biases at the beginning, all these things that have been set up for us, these people are very different, they're cruel, they're barbaric, they don't understand us.
This is a hijack!
Many Arab Americans blame Hollywood for perpetuating the myth that all of them are either terrorists or oil barons, when most are neither. The head of the National Association of Arab Americans, Jawad George, says while much in the media is unfair, the discussion of differences is good.
One very positive consequence of this crisis in the Gulf right now is people see Arabs in different camps. There are some Arabs that are good guys, and there's some Arabs that are not.
The experts do agree on one thing.
War, the Inmarsat telephone. 6 news organizations have these phones at the Al Rashid Hotel. By beaming to a satellite over the Indian Ocean and linking to several Earth stations, you can plug into the world telephone system at $10 a minute. This system of communication is indispensable because multinational bombing has knocked out Iraq's telephone system. The AP man in Baghdad reads his report to the Home Office over the Inmarsat telephone, while an Iraqi Ministry of Information official listens. The presence of such officials also an indispensable part of Baghdad coverage because all news reports are subject to censorship. CNN has 2 Inmarsat telephones in Baghdad, used for coordinating the transmission of television pictures by CNN portable transmitter. The CNN phones are also used by other news organizations to coordinate picture transmission and to send news stories. Such users include German, French, and Japanese television, and Turkish, Algerian, Greek, and Jordanian print reporters. Iraqi stringers for the Voice of America and Radio Monte Carlo also use the CNN telephone. Under instructions from CNN management in Atlanta, the use of the telephones in Baghdad is strictly supervised by the company's 6 staffers at the Al Rashid Hotel. Hours of transmission are limited to 3 times each day by the Information Ministry, each time around 1 hour. When the phones are not in use, they are dismantled and made inoperable. Similar procedures are followed by other news organizations in Baghdad, including British Independent Television Network.
We use it all the time speaking to our office, but there are quite a few European journalists who use it. They phone their offices and file their copy.
Do you have any control over the usage of that phone?
Oh yes. While we're using the phone, or while anybody's using the phone, somebody from ITN is always there. It's a bit of a pain because, as you know, we're standing outside the whole time, and it is quite cold, but somebody's always there. And when we leave, we take the handset with us, so it's impossible to use when we're not there.
News organizations here in Baghdad were surprised at charges made outside Iraq that the satellite phones are being misused by Iraqi officials to communicate abroad. Agence France Presse supervises its phone carefully. Are you sure that only the people on your list are using it? Are you sure that the Iraqi government, Iraqi officials are not using it?
I'm pretty sure of that, Peter, because I dismantled the phone and I always the main part with me, and I always have it with me, so nobody else can use it. And I keep a list of every people who use it day by day.
It's never been used for that. I can say that because someone has always been there when the phone's been used.
CNN has allowed its phones to be used on limited occasions by Iraqi Information Ministry officials to communicate with the Iraqi embassy in Amman, Jordan, to convey visa information on journalists invited in. When word of outside criticism was received here last week, these officials agreed to use the English language in any further communications abroad so we could monitor them. The ITN organization has also allowed its phone to be used for the assistance of incoming journalists.
The Ministry of Information will use the phone on occasion when they need to phone Amman, the Iraqi embassy in Amman, to organize visas for journalists to come out. To my knowledge, that's the only time it's been used by Iraqis.
CNN also uses its phone for humanitarian communications, such as the search for the missing Bob Simon and the CBS crew, and for conveying good news to the folks at home that lost journalistic colleagues have turned up. Tuesday afternoon, Egyptian newsman Mahmoud Metahid was able to call Cairo over our phone to tell his office that the reason he'd been missing since January 13 was that he'd been in an accident in Baghdad and had been treated in a hospital since then. One factor overrides all in our use of the phones. We believe that our conversations are being monitored by the eavesdropping resources of the U.S. defense establishment. None of us want to become targets, so we are careful about what we say and who says it. Peter Arnett, CNN, Baghdad.
And again, upbeat, wishful thinking, or a real chance at a rebound. In CNN's Crossfire, 7:30 Eastern tonight.
Some deserters from the Iraqi army say they're tired of fighting for nothing. 10 deserters who surrendered to an Egyptian unit today told reporters that many soldiers are abandoning their posts and most are heading back toward their homes. They say supplies are short and even veterans of the war with Iran are weary because of the relentless bombing. The soldiers say Saddam Hussein has ordered that mines be laid behind the troops to prevent desertion. The soldiers say a sentry spotted them leaving and ordered them back but did not shoot.
Iraqi officials tell CNN that Soviet envoy Yevgeny Primakov has met with President Saddam Hussein. Earlier today, Primakov toured bomb-damaged areas of Baghdad, and Primakov is a personal envoy of Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. A spokesman for Mr. Gorbachev says Primakov would try to convince Saddam Hussein to abide by the United Nations resolution and withdraw from Kuwait. Air raids began within hours of Primakov's arrival in the Iraqi capital, and just a few hours ago, another intensive air raid began. The latest Iraqi military communique calls the Allies savages and says that they have hit numerous civilian targets in the last 24 hours, including hospitals, a reservoir, homes, and shops. An Allied air attack last night destroyed the Iraqi Ministry of Local Government and damaged the Justice Ministry. Iraq says 6 people died and 17 others were hurt in that attack in downtown Baghdad.
The foreign minister of France says the Soviets sent envoy Yevgeny Primakov to Baghdad to assess whether Saddam Hussein's position has changed. Foreign Minister Roland Dumas met with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev in Moscow today. Dumas says France and the Soviet Union agree on the goals of the Allied campaign. He says the Soviets told him they have pulled all advisors out of Iraq. There have been reports in the last few days suggesting some Soviet military advisors might still be in Iraq. A top Iraqi official is in Algiers to drum up support for his nation. Deputy Prime Minister Sadoun Hamadi told a news conference President Bush may be trying to deceive Iraq with his comments about a ground war. President Bush has said he is in no hurry to start a ground offensive. Hamadi says Iraq would be ready if the land war started today and would welcome it.
Foreign ministers from 15 non-aligned countries and the PLO today apparently failed to agree on a peace plan for the Gulf War. Yugoslav officials say the conference being held in Belgrade hit a snag over whether Iraq should withdraw from Kuwait as a precondition to any peace accord. One proposal discussed called for Saddam Hussein to declare his unequivocal agreement to pull out of Kuwait. That would be followed by a ceasefire by the Allies and a mutual phased pullout by both sides. Replacing the Iraqi and Allied troops would be a UN peacekeeping force. Refugees arriving in Jordan from Iraq speak of a country being turned into a wasteland by Allied bombing. Their reports cannot be independently confirmed, but they do speak of civilian casualties, food and water shortages, and other hardships. CNN's Tony Clark has talked with some of them.
The human toll of the Gulf War continues to mount. Refugees arriving in Jordan from Iraq and Kuwait bring with them horror stories of life and death amid the bombing.
The bombing was on civilian areas.
We saw one plane also shoot one bus full of civilian people.
I heard from a fellow driver that 3 Jordanian buses were hit, and many times Jordanian buses were hit, but never this serious.
In the southern Iraqi city of Basra, 75 miles north of Kuwait, the massive Allied bombing has made it difficult and dangerous to bring in food. All across Iraq and Kuwait, food and other necessities are scarce.
There is a shortage of water. There is no electricity. People get their water from the river.
There are shortages of everything: flour, foodstuffs, everything. They've been hoarding supplies for a long time, and prices at the market are high. The only thing left are 2 shops with vegetables only.
Refugees say flour in Kuwait is selling at $200 for a 100-pound sack on the black market. Gasoline sells for $8 a gallon when you can get it. The International Red Cross is helping refugees on both sides of the Jordanian-Iraqi border simply survive.
The ICRC is assisting on a daily basis.
It would have been a different story.
But the White House says it fears the Iraqi leader is winning some propaganda points worldwide by claiming high civilian casualties. Moscow has sent envoy Yevgeny Primakov to Baghdad, where today he toured bombed areas and sought to maintain Soviet influence in a region clearly made more volatile by charges and denials about damage and death that probably cannot be verified till war's end. In Washington, Jim Upshaw, Channel 4 News.
The ground war against Iraqi positions in Kuwait has not started yet, but Saddam Hussein's troops are taking a pounding. U.S. and allied ground gunners opened fire on an Iraqi troop concentration in southeastern Kuwait overnight. The ground gunners were joined by warplanes and the 16-inch guns of the USS Missouri. By all accounts, the joint attack was a success.
It was a good test for the command and control system for the whole joint forces, taking into consideration the difference in languages and training background, and it did prove a very good sign.
Despite that attack, the Allied command in Operation Desert Storm still depends overwhelmingly on air power to soften up the Iraqi military machine. A number of Allied air missions in the Gulf has now topped the 65,000 mark, and planes are flying virtually unchallenged by the Iraqi Air Force. CBS News says it's checking reports
and criticized for living it up in exile, but many others have volunteered to help liberate their country as soldiers in the new Kuwaiti army. CNN's Charles Jaco reports from a Kuwaiti army training camp in Saudi Arabia.
There are 610 of these men. The youngest is 15, the oldest is 50. They used to be students and accountants and clerks. Now, they're soldiers. They're soldiers in Kuwait's new army. That new army will have 30,000 troops. The old Kuwaiti army, the one that let Iraq roll through Kuwait in less than 48 hours, had only 22,000 men. After 4 weeks of training here, they'll leave for 3 weeks advanced training. Then it's into the field, scattered in positions on the Saudi-Kuwait border. But no one expects these soldiers to march right into Kuwait. Even their officers admit their presence on the front is as much political as it is military. But try telling that to Mahdi al-Jami, who left his chemical company job when the Iraqis invaded.
We lost the home, and you must to be bring it. We lost it by fighting, so we must to be back it by fighting.
Or Naif al-Tamai, who used to be a student.
I love my country, and all the people here, they love their country, and they came here to fight with the Kuwait and all university for it, to fight to bring back Kuwait.
Or Khalid al-Enzi, who is 15. At an age when most teenagers are first discovering girls, he is discovering how to kill.
He said that I take a decision that Kuwait must be liberated. If liberation is need to kill, I will kill, of course.
Kuwait used to be one of the world's richest countries. Now some of these recruits commute to the camp in expensive cars, but most sleep in these tents, and most express anger at the hundreds of thousands of Kuwaitis who fled their country and live in well-heeled exile in places like Cairo or London. Even these soldiers are only a small fraction of the tens of thousands of Kuwaiti exiles in Saudi Arabia. Ahmad al-Rashidi, who used to work in a customs house, says other exiles should be ashamed not to fight.
I think they must be feeling too not good. Yeah, I can't tell you how can I think about them, but must become fair to be soldier.
And these men, who were anything but soldiers before, now find themselves trained to fight for their lives. Many Kuwaitis wait to go home, living in splendid exile in the Middle East or Europe. Kuwaitis here wait to go home, living in desert tents, waiting to go home alive or dead. Charles Jaco, CNN, Saudi Arabia.